Moana once more exiles. Today we actually have a second batch of brand new Path of Exile 2 information directly from Jonathan Rogers himself on the Path of Exile 2 subreddit. This of course is going to be posted in the morning though, not tonight, but I do get to read it off tonight and I don't have to wake up super early in the morning, which is good because tomorrow is our holiday celebration here at our household with my daughter and wife, so I don't want to be recording a POE 2 video tomorrow morning. Anyways, let's get right to it. The first question is once again from XXPoombaXX. They say, with 36 Ascendancies in the game, any chance we might be able to see the Ascendancy on the character creation menu? Now, if we scroll down here, we see Jonathan responds and says, we will probably display what they are, but I'm a little hesitant to show the full skill tree for them. I think that's too much. What we probably will have are some videos of some of the skill archetypes that are designed for the class, so you can have an idea about what the gameplay will be like. Fantastic. This is something that I've always been asking for in Path of Exile, and I don't understand why it was never included ever since the introduction of Ascendancies in Ascendancy League. I think that was 2.3. They're such a core part of the game, and understanding that you're not just a witch the entire time, you can be an occultist, an elementalist, or a necromancer is vital to players understanding that they can truly evolve their character throughout the game. Somebody responds below, Render Dopamine, and says, I like this approach. Last Epoch does something similar. It gives an overview of the 3 specialized classes for each base class, but does not overwhelm the user with all of the skill tree info. I think this helps give some idea of the class flavor without being too overwhelming. They're right, it's totally sensible, and I'm glad that this is actually going to be in Path of Exile 2. Next up, Strill asks, PoE 1 enemies like to dump on melee characters with lots of close range AoE attacks. Will we see more anti-ranged attacks in PoE 2 to balance things out? A lot of games I've played have enemies that mostly target nearby players and ignore faraway players, using attacks like point-blank AoEs. This leads to gameplay where melee is just hard mode, because there's a bunch of extra attacks that melee characters must dodge, but ranged characters can completely ignore. It never goes the other way around either. If an enemy is ranged and can hit a ranged character, it can still also hit a melee character, so melee characters still can't catch a break. To balance things out, will PoE 2 have more attacks which melee characters can ignore, but ranged characters must deal with? Say, for example, archers that are helpless in melee range, or a boss that hits everything except the area around him. Now, Jonathan does respond here, but it's kind of a cagey answer. He says, it's often safer to be near a boss than farther away. This is because the distance you need to travel in order to change your relative angle to the boss is much shorter. So this is already true in Path of Exile 1. You can look at the Cirrus fight, for example. It's way easier to dodge the die beam when you're standing right in front of Cirrus instead of being super far away. You know, like walking back into the arena. I know that many people have probably encountered that, where they fight Cirrus, die, walk into the arena, and instantly get targeted by the die beam. They'd probably be able to dodge it if they were standing next to Cirrus when that happened, but being at the doorway, it's never going to happen there. So it doesn't really answer the question if there will be dynamic attacks from bosses and enemies based on the travel distance, but his point does make sense. Now, Finnick asks, PoE 1 and PoE 2 shared endgame. We did address this question in yesterday's video. I said they're split out. They're different games now. They're not going to have a shared endgame. Now, Jonathan Rogers responds and says, it was initially the plan back at the first ExileCon, but not anymore. The bosses of regular maps in the endgame of PoE 2 will be based on the PoE 2 campaign bosses. Even when PoE 2 and PoE 1 were supposed to have a shared endgame, it was always the plan to use the PoE 2 campaign bosses as the staples of endgame maps. They are significant, and that's in italics, upgrades to many of the PoE 1 bosses. And that's true. We've seen so many bosses so far for Path of Exile 2. The giant in the volcano, the beast in the goblin arena, the siren that is basically a 10x quality merveil, the crow bell that rips a bell off a tower and uses it as a weapon, and everyone, we haven't even seen any act bosses yet, and they always go so incredibly hard with act bosses. Can you imagine what the act boss of Act 6 will look like? Act 1? I mean, any of the acts really. It's such a crazy thing to think about that in about 6 months, actually maybe less than 6 months, no, about 6 months, we'll actually be able to play Path of Exile 2 through the entire campaign and the skeleton of the endgame. This is so amazing, and I can't wait to actually pit myself against all these wild bosses. Funny comment down here by Hans09 saying, GGG announced a few weeks ago that they are separated games now. Epic Gamer responds, few weeks, Exile, I hate to tell you, it's been an entire league, and then some weeks on top of that. Really? Was it before last league? I thought it was before this one, lol. Time flies. Yeah, it was all the way back on July 29th that they announced this. Today is December 22nd. That's quite some time, my fellow Exile. But indeed, time does fly. Now, this is an absolutely juicy, beefy question from a pretty famous person in the Path of Exile community. They run a podcast called Forever Exiled. This is posted by user Wrecker of Days. I'm concerned about visual clarity and on-death effects and damage in PoE 2. They say, I love PoE. I've been playing it forever, like almost all of you. But one of the most frustrating things for me in PoE 1 is the on-death effects and damage that a character can take. To me, Path of Exile is all about the loot. When the loot drops, the fight is done, and I can't wait to see if I can improve my character. It can be quite infuriating to die after the fight is done, and it most definitely ruins the experience for the moment. On-death damage has never been a fun experience for me in any game, visual clarity aside. It sucks in a one-on-one fight, let alone when there's 100 enemies on the screen. But visual clarity is a big problem in PoE 1 as well, with different MTX, awkward level layouts and placements, minions, on-ground skills from monsters and users. They don't prioritize or overlap well and often blend in with the environment. Both visual clarity and on-death's effects and damage individually are issues in PoE 1. In my opinion, but they also enjoy teaming up often for the extra bit of cynical laughter. I'm sure I haven't heard every quote from GGG about PoE 2, and I know that PoE 2 is being built from the ground up, but I haven't heard anything about this subject yet, except for seeing a streamer at PoE 2 die to a boss's on-death damage during a live demo at ExileCon 2. Since PoE 1 is all I have to go on, I'm concerned that all this amazing stuff that PoE 2 is adding to the experience, new ascendancies, skills, gameplay, everything, will all be overshadowed by the same frustrating things that make me hate PoE 1 sometimes. Does anyone else share the same concerns? I'd hate for all this amazing effort being put into the sequel to get ruined by the little things that are actually a big deal once in full-fledged gameplay, you know? If GGG sees this, has there been any discussion that can be shared with the public about your plans, or lack thereof, regarding on-death effects, damage, and or visual clarity in general? What difference will there be compared to PoE 2 in this regard, if any? Now, before I get to my opinion, Jonathan did respond to Wrecker of Days. Jonathan actually said, oh, it's here somewhere. I thought I saw a GGG sign here. Oh, maybe. Oh, okay, so somebody responds right here. Strill says, he's quoting Wrecker of Days. No one finds them, son. No one thinks they add meaningful, engaging difficulty. Strill says, they can be good if they're clearly telegraphed, and there's ways to work around them. Like an enemy who drops a time bomb that glows and grows before it explodes. Porcupines are basically the opposite of that. There's no way to dodge them because they shoot in every direction to the edge of the screen and explode instantly. And there's nothing special about their appearance that indicates they're dangerous except the spikes upon them. Now Jonathan responds to this, which in return is kind of responding to Wrecker of Days, and says, porcupines have been changed in PoE 2 to have a delay. What? An animated telegraph? What? And the projectiles are limited distance firing because they have been switched to use ballistics. Wait, ballistics in PL, this is gonna be so wild, you guys. There are two ways you can use on-death effects as a designer. Ooh, interesting. The first is, don't kill these too fast. The second is, you need to counterplay these. Ideally, in PoE 2, we are always doing the second, but in PoE 1, we have been guilty of the first. Yeah, of course you have, Jonathan. So that sort of answers part of Wrecker of Days' question. They obviously don't want to be using constant on-death effects in PoE 2, even though that was something that they've done as a staple for a long time in PoE 1. You know, now that I think about it, they have kind of moved away from it. Porcupine is one of the most egregious examples of on-death effects in Path of Exile 1. Many of the other ones aren't instant anymore. You know, there are the magma orbs that explode after following you, hitting you, and giving a little bit of a delay. There are all the various AoEs that count down a few seconds, but still I somehow stumble myself into. There are lightning mirages, there are those poison orbs, but a lot of stuff isn't really instant as I'm sitting here thinking about it. Besides porcupines, which have killed me many times before, of course, when my defenses aren't up to snuff, but it's good to hear that in Path of Exile 2, they are cognizant of the fact that this is a seriously big issue for many players, and they will be addressing it. Now, I do wish that they would have responded about visual clarity, although from all of the press releases and all of the showcases that they've done, obviously everything is very visually clear, right? But will it stay that way? I don't really think so. There are going to be huge packs. It's going to be absolutely wild. Blasters everywhere, you know, explosions from crossbows and monsters running all about. It's going to be hard, but I think it's going to be better than Path of Exile 1 because the graphical quality and animation quality is so much higher. That fidelity is there that you're going to be able to tell the difference between various objects on your screen far better than you can in Path of Exile 1. I might be eating my words. We'll have to see. There is actually another response from Jonathan here. Actually, Krip's Death at ExileCon that Record of Days mentioned in his post is actually right here. So let's actually take a look at it. Okay. Oh no.
How much gold do we get?
Oh no, come on, Krip. Oh, you have to be kidding me. Okay, that AoE is insane. And I mean, you do kind of see that this creature's going to explode, but a lot of creatures have wild on-death effects. There's no way that you would actually know, right, the first time you fight this creature, that it's going to massively just blow up like this. What do you think the AoE is like? Do you think it's like all the way over there? You think? It might be. That's crazy. Well, Jonathan responds and says, the AoE was clearly too large there for sure, and it shouldn't just one-shot you either. And the static life bar shouldn't disappear until after it explodes. Oh, he's very smart. That particular on-death is really more for theme than a thing that is actually supposed to kill you. And it killed Kripparrian. So that's pretty good to hear. I'm glad. I hope they think about this and edit it before the game releases. Obviously, Jonathan is aware, and the team is therefore aware as well. Okay, time for another question. This one we did address yesterday, and I thought they were just going to do 2 rows. Nobody else thought that. They think that they're going to change this completely, and they are correct. So, Yuruno Kagi says, how is that absolutely amazing class selection scene going to change with the now 12 classes? I love the concept. I hope you found a way to make it work with double the characters to be hanged. Now, Jonathan does respond and says, I wish I had a better solution to this. Currently, when you click on a character class, you get 2 boxes to the left and right. Clicking the box changes which character is standing there. Because they are based on the same underlying model, it effectively changes the clothes they are wearing, hair, style, tattoos. So the transition isn't too jarring. I'm thinking of theming it as you first choose your attributes, like intelligence, and then you choose what the background of your character is. Was she brought up as a witch or a sorceress? I'm still not 100% happy about it though. Having 12 characters standing there waiting to be hanged is clearly ridiculous, but having to pick attribute then class just isn't quite as cool either. This is a huge bummer, honestly. I'm gonna say it. I loved that scene. That was just metal as all hell. I wish they kept it in the game, and this does sound actually a little jarring. So there's like little checkboxes, and you click it, and it changes the model from a witch to a sorceress. Or yeah, just not a fan. Maybe they should go with, like he said, the attributes, and the group of that attribute type is standing there. So there would be what, 4 of each, since there are 12 different or combos. That's kind of difficult actually. Man, that's unfortunate. Perhaps a random selection goes with you after you choose your character. So you choose the class, right? And then a group of them walk up and are almost going to be all hung. Because that scene itself, I mean, it was baller. We'll have to see what happens though when Path of Exile 2 hits. Jonathan obviously is open to altering it a tad. Okay, Manituan asks, Shield Protector Archetype. Will PoE 2 have a class or ascendancy specialized in shields and or reflect damage? Will it be a viable way of playing? I enjoy the sword and board class fantasy and gameplay, but in PoE 1, the fast meta made it a mediocre option. Now that PoE 2 will be hopefully slower, this archetype may shine again. Man, I don't think it's going to be that much slower, but okay, let's see what Jonathan has to say here. Oh, he responds to somebody else. The closest we've seen to that may be the Templar. And Jonathan says, Templar is the class for this. Yes. You can mainhand a scepter and offhand a shield. This would give you max defense and spirit in exchange for low direct damage potential. See, I'm starting to get the idea though, that a lot of these questions on the Path of Exile 2 subreddit, Tangent Time, are just almost demands. Maybe demands is the wrong word, but just what people believe should be in Path of Exile 2, and they're trying to get it in front of the creators, right? They're seeing this as a conduit to kind of change the game. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. The game is already built mostly. I think the primary areas can be sort of minorly shifted, but but they're not going to be drastically changed, right? It's still going to be an ARPG. It's going to be linear through the campaign. It's not going to be an open world. It's not going to be something that, you know, you're playing for exploration purposes or stuff like that. It's going to be an ARPG. And it's going to be difficult, right? The bosses are going to be hard. Building a character is going to be complex and deep, and you're going to have to think about what you're going to do, puzzle your way out of situations. It's not going to be basic like some other ARPGs that are out there. And I do think that some of the people in this subreddit are kind of hoping that it is. I really hope that it isn't. I really enjoy the puzzling aspect of PoE, and I don't think that's going to change. And I think some people are definitely going to be disappointed by that fact. Speaking of stuff that I don't think works in Path of Exile 2, honestly, I think PvP could actually be fun in PoE 2. This is again by XX Pumbaa XX. I hate PvP in PoE 1. The game is not designed for it due to how the game works. Game is too fast for PvP to be any fun. With that said, with the change GGG is making to how the game works, I'd actually be curious to see if it's fun. The game seems to have well-telegraphed moves due to animation, combat is slowed down, everyone has a dodge. There was room for something interesting there. Granted, I wouldn't want them to spend a lot of resources on it. It would be a shame if you couldn't PvP at all. Jonathan responds and says, it isn't going to be the focus for PoE 2, certainly not for launch anyway. It will still be supported like it is in PoE 1 though. Maybe we will give it another crack one day, but not for launch. I agree with Jonathan. They can have it, a simple arena mode in the game just for people to chill out and fight each other. You know, that MTX that was just added where you can actually duel people in your hideout. That's cool, but having it as a focus, not great. This game is about killing monsters. And I know this person right here says that the game will be more well telegraphed, and it will be because of the awesome animations and such, but you're still going to be able to scale your character to be godly. They have different stages of attack animations for all of their skills based on what attack speed or cast speed that you have. You know, stage 1 is base, stage 2 is, much increased, and stage 3, I'm guessing, is absolutely godly. We're gonna reach that level. We're gonna reach that wild level that we can in Path of Exile 1, although it won't be as insane. You won't be shooting 10,000 projectiles. Okay, that might be a bit too much. You won't be shooting 1,500 projectiles. You'll still be shooting 100 projectiles, and that accomplishes the same thing as 1,500, but it's not as absolutely bonkers on the screen and game destroying as the 1,500, right? I don't think PvP is for PoE 2, and I'm glad that they're not focusing on it to start. They want to make sure that the game's foundation is set, that they have Endgame down, that they have the solid skill system, the passive skill system. All that stuff is going to be fantastic, and I'm glad that they're really deciding to not try to adopt some other areas from some other games out there that really tried to chase and grab all these different audiences and ended up murkying the waters of their vast ARPG. GGG is not going to do that. Okay, there we have it, everybody. That was the latest update from Jonathan Rogers and GGG about Path of Exile 2. But that's not it. There's actually going to be an interview, a live interview, not with me and GGG, but with the OG Path of Exile content creator himself, Kripparrian. Next Wednesday, that's 5 days, no, that's now 4 days from the time this video is posted. That is going to be phenomenal. It's going to be at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time next Wednesday, I'm guessing on Twitch, on Krip's channel, and he is going to be talking live with Jonathan Rogers, asking him all the questions he has about Path of Exile 2, and taking questions from the chat. Now, I know Twitch isn't everybody's cup of tea, and some people just want to get their information from other content creators, maybe like a talking Triceratops. So of course I will be covering that as soon as it finishes and posting probably a 15-minute video on all the answered questions and what exactly the PoE community had to say about Jonathan talking to Kripparrian. Going to be great. It will remind us of those old days when Kripparrian spoke with Chris Wilson in the early days of Path of Exile 1, back and during the inception of this ARPG that we all love and hate. Look out for some more videos from me soon. I have some big plans for the rest of this year and the new year. I'll be releasing a video about that pretty soon. Anyways, that's all for this video. Talamoana, Exiles.